In the name of the Blessed Trinity, one holy and living God. Amen. Please be seated. So, friends, this is the day where our faith meets the pavement. The pavement being the place of judgment where Jesus is condemned and, following ceremonious beatings and scourgings, is promptly executed. Although that part of it was not swift. Crucifixion was ugly, one of the worst ways to die. That was intentional. A point was being made. And a point is being made here in this our space, which is void of our crosses, mostly, because this is the day we don't get to wear them ornamentally. We don't get to parade them around. The best we can do is fall in front of them and struggle to find any good at all in this, our Good Friday. So I'm going to tell you a story. I'm going to tell you the only story I know about this day. It is the story where the Word made flesh meets the world. It is a story where Christ meets our world. Jesus' crucifixion should not have made headlines. It was not news, and it was never good news. The streets were often lined with Jews on crosses. What's one more? What makes this crucifixion noteworthy? Unironically, and not at all symbolically, there have been 3 state-sanctioned executions in the United States so far this year. Did you know that? I cannot tell you any of their names or their stories. They weren't news. And neither was Jesus. Pilate knew this. You can tell by his exasperated responses to the authorities who brought Jesus before him. What are you doing getting me out of bed at this hour for this nobody? Take him yourselves and judge him according to your law. But the authorities couldn't, because it wasn't justice that was on their minds. It was death. And you can't blame Pilate for that. He tried. He did. It's not his fault, she says sarcastically. His hands were clean that day. We watched him wash them. He worked for a corrupt and easily manipulated justice system whose purpose was not to protect the innocent, but rather to keep the powerful in power. And you can't blame a player for getting played. Pilate asked the right questions. Are you the king? But Jesus wasn't interested in a defense. Jesus was interested in truth. And that was a frustration to Pilate. What is truth? It's a fair question for a judicial ruler to ask. Everyone who has come before him has had their own truth, their own version of the story. What makes one person's truth with a small t become the truth with a big T? Everyone is passionate. Everyone is right. Just ask them. Pilate can't get bogged down in the emotions of that, so the moment Jesus mentioned truth, he detached. What is truth? I have heard it all before. So he ruled on facts, and the facts supported the truth, big T, but Pilate had an angry mob in front of him. And there is nothing worse than a courtyard crowd who thinks they are defending God's honor. Now that's irony, isn't it? What was it that Jesus said? They know not what they do. And Pilate had his job to consider, and this got out of hand. He'd had to appease the crowd. After all, Jesus never gave Pilate a reason to risk his own neck. In fact, Jesus never said a mumbling word in his own defense. It's not Pilate's fault he caved under the political pressure. Maybe it was an election year. See, there is nothing extraordinary about Jesus' trial or his execution. It was disappointingly commonplace and still is. There are still betrayals as well as gross inequities in the justice system. There is a growing number of bloodthirsty defenders of the faith who are executing their own swift and personal justice. Hate crimes are on the rise. Again, and our reading of John's text today did not help that situation. We have enough personal instruments of death, enough firearms to end all innocence. And still, many deny there's even a problem. But that's how it goes. Denial isn't new. It started well before Peter and the rooster. To his credit, though, Peter had the decency to weep about it. Everyone else? Well, not so much. You're with that rebel Jesus, aren't you? You're one of his disciples. No, not us, the people insist. We have no king but Caesar. At least that part is not a lie. Allegiances have been pledged. Sides have been taken. Jesus' mangled body continues to be shrouded in the flag of the empire of the day. Thank heavens. Now we can feel good about going to war with our neighbors. The world's a mess. Jesus was right. It is finished. And we have brought about our own end. So what are we even doing here today? What is the purpose of Good Friday? Why the cross? Why did Jesus have to die? And there is actually an answer to this. And it is important. So lean in. Jesus didn't die because we are bad. Jesus died because we are loved. Now let me say that again. Jesus didn't die because we are bad. Jesus died because we are loved. And I would even go so far as to say that Jesus didn't die for, as in instead of, us. He died with us, graciously, mercifully, lovingly, amongst us sinners. He accepted his humanity and ours and experienced it to the extreme. In doing so, he didn't end sin, violence, or death. Instead, he pointed to our complicity in the suffering and ended the silence which has made it possible and acceptable. And this may not have changed history, but it forever changed our story by showing us how to respond to such things in love Because that is the only option God offers us. You see, Jesus' words and deeds were in sharp, deliberate contrast to the violence around him. In the gravest of circumstances, he carried a consistent message of love. This was radical behavior which cost him his life. And more importantly, it was behavior that leaves us absolutely no room to misunderstand God's message that violence is unacceptable. Because you see, God will not even use it to save God's self. But even that message should have died with Jesus. One more execution amongst many, not unlike the 3 inmates who were executed so far this year. I don't know their names or their stories, but someone does. Maybe like the 2 criminals who were crucified with Jesus, maybe they deserve to die. Maybe. But as Jesus proved on this day, they were also worth dying for. And someone is telling their stories. Mothers, wives, children, friends. We are so desensitized to death that we don't even keep track of its victims anymore. There's just too many. It's like their deaths don't matter. But they do. Death matters when it's your child, your friend, your teacher, your neighbor. And that's exactly what happened at the cross. It was personal. It was personal to those who were there, and they told Jesus' story of love over and over and over again. On Good Friday, we ask the age-old question of the spiritual. So, were you there the day they crucified my Lord? And the answer is yes. We were there, and we are still there. Humanity is constantly at the ugly brink of self-destruction. But here's the good news. Here is the message of the cross that we not only must tell, we must live. As hateful and violent as the world can be, Jesus pushes us away from the edge of that abyss, and with his arms outstretched, he says, "No more." The violence stops here with me. It is finished.